Welcome to the Divorce Your Remarriage podcast. We're continuing our overview of my book, Divorce Your Remarriage, which you can get at Amazon.com. The goal of the book is to help you learn, live, and where appropriate lead on the subject of divorce and remarriage in your context. So today we're going to go through some specific divorce and remarriage scenarios. Scenario number one, a man and a woman, they get married. So let's go ahead to that picture. Okay, so their marriage is valid. These are two young people. They're in love. They get married. Everything is wonderful and beautiful. But a few years go by. It's not working out. Irreconcilable differences or adultery or whatever the case is, and they get divorced. Now, in this case, neither one of them are free to remarry. If they were to remarry, that remarriage would be adultery. It'd be a continual state of adultery. We see that in Matthew 5, Matthew 19, Mark 10, Luke 16 to be adultery, Romans 7. It'd be a continual state of adultery, and they'd be obligated to divorce that second spouse, as we'll see here in a minute. Okay, so now after the divorce, the man, let's say he goes ahead and marries another woman. They get divorced, and then here is the next marriage. Okay, so now this marriage, this is her first marriage. This is his second marriage, but her first marriage. Okay. And so this remarriage is a continual state of adultery. He's cheating on his first spouse that we saw earlier. All right. Now let's presume that he goes ahead and divorces her. Right. Now that's what he should do, actually, because that was a continual state of adultery. So he divorces her. Now she is free to go ahead and marry somebody else because her first marriage was not a valid marriage. It was an adulterous union, not a valid marriage. But he must remain unmarried or go back to his first wife if possible. Okay. Now let's go back to them being married, the man and the second woman. Now, if he does not divorce her, then the only thing that could change the situation is if somebody died, right? So now let's talk about those scenarios. So the first possibility is that the first wife dies. Now, if she dies first, then his marriage to the second wife becomes a valid marriage. Now, why is that? Because his marriage obligation to his first wife is gone. There's nobody for him to cheat on anymore. He's not cheating on his first wife because she's not here anymore. And so therefore, all the necessary conditions for the second marriage to be valid are there. The only thing that made that second marriage not valid was that he was in a previous marriage. But once that's gone, now there's no invalidating trait. The only thing that was invalidating it before was the first marriage. First marriage is over upon the death of the first wife. And so now the second marriage is a legitimate marriage. But let's suppose the first wife doesn't die first, but let's suppose actually that the man died first. Well, if he died first, he dies as an adulterer. And somebody dies as an adulterer, that doesn't give them a lot of comfort that they're going to make it to heaven. Okay, so it's a big deal. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 talks about how adulterers will not inherit the kingdom of God. So then in this situation, what that means is his second wife, she's free to remarry since her marriage to her first husband, this guy who's now deceased, that was an invalid marriage anyway. But also we should mention that she is not a widow because she was never in a valid marriage. That doesn't really matter a whole lot, but it's technically speaking, she's not a widow. Also, this man's first wife, she's free to remarry because her valid marriage to him has now been dissolved once he dies. All right, there's one other possibility. What if the second wife dies before her husband or her fake husband and the first wife? What if the second wife dies first? Well, then she dies as an adulteress, and in that particular case, she's going to have a problem in eternity. Now, her husband, so to speak, her adulterous husband, he must remain unmarried or go back to his first wife if possible because he's still married. From God's perspective, he joined him and her in that first marriage together. And so now they either need to be unmarried or reconciled to themselves, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, verses 10 and 11. All right, before we go on to scenario 2, if you want evangelicalism to become more biblical on divorce and remarriage, I have a Patreon account you can donate to. You can be part of the team to help get this content out to more believers. It's patreon.com/divorce your remarriage. I'll have a link to that in the description below. But now we're going to get into scenario number 2. Man and a woman are married. But now this is her first marriage, but he was previously married. And so she's trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, my husband was previously married. Is her current marriage valid or not? He was originally married to another woman, right? Here we have that on the screen. And let's say his name is Joe and her name is Jane. Okay, so now if this is all the facts and Jane was still alive, then the lady who's doing this research, this second wife, her marriage is an adulterous remarriage. It's an invalid marriage that ought to be divorced because they're just committing adultery. And who are they committing adultery against? The first wife, who we've named Jane here. Okay, but she does a little bit more research and she finds out that Jane was actually married before So Jane had a first marriage before she married Joe. What that means is that Jane's marriage to Joe was actually an adulterous remarriage. That was an invalid marriage as long as her first husband was alive during the entire duration of her marriage to Joe. Because that means that when Jane and Joe got divorced, Joe had never been in a real marriage before. So now his second marriage is actually his first valid marriage. His first marriage here to Jane was invalid during the entire duration. So you really do have to go back and look at the prior spouses and who was married to who and who died at what period in time. And you have to actually get the dates in order to kind of figure all these things out, because a marriage that started off as invalid can become valid after the death of the first valid spouse. So you do have to kind of go through and look at all of that. Now we're in scenario number 3. A man and a woman are married. It's both their first marriage. It's a valid marriage, okay? But then, unfortunately, they get divorced. Then he goes ahead and marries a second woman, and this is her first marriage, okay? But then they get divorced, okay? And then he goes ahead and marries a third woman. This is her first marriage also, right? So now, while he's in this third marriage, his first wife passes away. Right. So now what happens is the marriage between the man and the third woman is now a valid marriage. And now you might wonder, wait a minute. But didn't he marry the second woman? What about the second woman? Well, here's the thing. During the entirety of that marriage to the second woman, his first wife was alive. His first wife didn't die until he was in this marriage to the third woman, and hence why his marriage to the third woman is a valid marriage. And his marriage to the second woman at no point was valid. The entire time it was an adulterous remarriage. So the second wife is free to go ahead and marry somebody else because she was never in a valid marriage before. But now after his first wife dies, he's now in a valid marriage with his third wife. Now we're going to get into scenario number 4. Now is when it's going to get a little bit different. In this situation, what you have is a man marries 2 women at the same time. What do we do about this, right? So this is not a valid marriage. A marriage is between one man and one woman. So in this instance, no one is married, since if they were married, it would be an adulterous marriage. It would be a commitment to commit adultery, and God doesn't join people like that. He joins one man and one woman. So an exchange of vows between 3 people or more, or an exchange of vows between a person and themselves or whatever. If it's not 2, and one man and one woman who are eligible to be married to one another, then it's not a valid marriage. So you might think, well, this is never going to happen. Why would you bring this up? Well, actually, there is a case I have heard about where this has happened, where a man married a woman who is a co-joined twin. And so these 2 women, this is very, very unusual. 2 women who are sisters are co-joined twins. And so one woman agrees to be married, and the other one says, well, I approve of this marriage, but I am not marrying the man. So she claims she's not marrying. She claims she's just approving of the marriage. But that's just not how this works. So when 2 people get married, it's not just their consciousness that gets married, not just their mind that gets married. It's their whole person, including their body. And when you share a body with another person, that person, if you go marry somebody, they're marrying them also if they approve of it. So there's no way to distinguish between approval and marriage. So that would be a man who marries a co-joined twin, where they both agree that this marriage can go forward, is a man marrying 2 women at one particular time. And that would be a scenario number 4, an unusual scenario, but we do have to have an answer for these things. Scenario number 5 is polygamy and polyamory, right? So that's somebody who's married to more than one person, but not maybe at the same time, but in succession, right? What you want to do is you want to think of these plural marriages, or polygyny or polygamy or polyamory. We have all these different words for it. But anyway, what you want to think about it is there's a couple that's married, and then they have adulterers or adulteresses living with them. That's how you want to think about it. So in this particular scenario, a man and a woman are married, and then he marries another woman, and then he marries another woman, and what's happening is he's married to the first woman, and he's cheating on her with the second woman and the third woman, but he's not cheating on the second woman with the third woman, right? Because he's not actually married to the second woman. He's not actually married to the third woman, so he can't commit adultery on them. He's cheating with them against the first wife. His marriages to the second and third wife are adulterous, continual states of adultery. They're invalid marriages, and they ought to be divorced. Now, suppose the first woman divorces him, and then she remarries. If she remarries, she's committing adultery against him. Now, it's true he's committing adultery against her with the second and third wife, but if she were to remarry, she would then also be committing adultery against him. What he should do is he should divorce the second and third wife and be single, or go back to his first wife. If he divorces the second and third wife, they're free to go marry somebody else, because they were never in a real marriage before. Now, suppose the first wife dies. Okay, so now he's no longer married to her. So now the question is he married to the second wife, or is he married to the third wife? And the answer is he's married to the second wife. And the reason for that is when he married the second wife, that was like a commitment to commit adultery against the first wife. But now the first wife is gone, so that commitment to commit adultery is gone now. But when he married the third wife, what they were doing is they made a commitment to commit adultery against the first and the fake second wife. And in that particular case, after the first wife dies, there's still like this commitment with the third wife to cheat against the second wife. So that would not be the real marriage. Now the real marriage would be him with the second woman. So now after the first wife dies, he's truly married to the second wife. And now let's say the third wife goes ahead and divorces him. Now, and then she goes ahead and she marries another man. Her second marriage here is a real marriage. Why? Because she was never in a valid marriage with that adulterous union that she had from the first polygamous marriage. All right, now we're on scenario number 6. This one is pretty simple, honestly. Two guys get married. This is not a real marriage. It's a gay marriage. They should civilly divorce, and they're free to go ahead and marry women. If two men marry, and then let's say one of them also marries a woman, the marriage between the man and the woman is a real marriage, and the homosexual marriage or whatever is cheating on that spouse. So that's how that would work. All right, now we have scenario number 7. What do we do about common law and other types of marriages? So a relationship commitment made and registered with the appropriate authority, with the government, between two people of the opposite sex for life, that's a real marriage, okay? So so that's if it's without duress, because they had real consent, it's with sufficient mental capacity, it's not incest, it's not adulterous, right? So you don't have any of those invalidating traits, right? And so consent is a thing that's required. So therefore, it's not a marriage just because the government says it's a marriage. The government can say, oh, you have a common law marriage. Yeah, but if the two didn't consent to be married, then they're not married. The government can't just marry people. That's not how it works. They have to consent and they have to agree to be married. So if there's a law that says, if there's two people who cohabitate for 7 years and they share finances and they're intimate and all that, in a committed relationship, we're going to treat them as though they're married. That does not make them actually married. They have to actually go ahead and consent to be married. So those are the complicated divorce and remarriage scenarios. Email me your thoughts, divorceyourremarriage@gmail.com. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And in our next video, we're going to talk about divorcing for safety. Is it permissible to divorce for safety or not? And we're going to talk about that next time. So we'll see you then.